Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. If you follow my work, you'll be very tired because I produce a metric ass ton of content, and I can't do all of that myself. I also can't afford an army of people to do it for me. So what I needed was a solution to get all my analysis, hot takes, and random asides out on social media. And I found that with Memento, the AI tool that basically takes all of my work and cuts it up, makes it look pretty, and pushes it all over the internet. If you have content and you need to repackage it, use Memento.
Morning everyone and welcome to the Scoreboard. Let's cricket. Dhruv Jurel was told to play straight as a kid, and that boy took it very seriously, which was handy on a wicket here where the ball was sometimes keeping low. Kuldeep continued to help him out as well, with England just looking tired and out of ideas. But the good news for the visiting team was that the wicket seemingly had all the cracks glued back together. Sadly for them, Ashwin did not care. In fact, he didn't even get the ball to spin. He didn't even worry about the cracks. He just took wickets from the normal good parts of the pitch by going straight. He turned into that second innings new ball destroyer and completely rocked England. But then Crawley came back hard and suddenly England were in it again. Approaching tea, they had lost 3 wickets and were scoring well on a pitch that wasn't really rolling along the ground like we had seen. Unfortunately, that actually did happen to Stokes again. Although, as Kuldeep and Crawley found out, playing back to even 1 ball on this wicket can be killer. But after tea, England they were bad. They were horrible. They were bad. Really bad. Bairstow pushed hard at the first ball and somehow got caught at short cover. Folks decided not to score for a long period of time, and even though 180 odd seemed like a decent total, when your 2 opening bowlers deliver just a metric shit ton of full tosses and half volleys, there's little you could do. If you want to know how a team can go from nearly unbackable favourites to losing a match, watch the last 2 hours again. But just a moment for this game. At lunch on day 1, England could not win. At drinks in the last session on day 2, India could not win. At stumps on day 3, England cannot win. That's quite a wild ride. Imagine trying to predict what will happen tomorrow. Either the cracks will open up further and snakes filled with hand grenades will come out and explode, or India will go on a lovely stroll while singing, "Oh, what a lovely day for a tea party." All right, let's get to the scoreboard. Same rules always apply. We'll get through the scoreboard, then you can ask questions. Super chats are appreciated and automatically stars, so I can't ignore them, even the ones I don't like. But there's some interesting questions as well, so feel free to get as many in as you can. But let's go on with the scoreboard. I want to talk about the pitch first. So I think this is from the Stokes wicket. You can just see this incredible crack here, and there's a 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 lot of cracks. The reason I show this is we didn't actually see that many balls play up today like we had on certainly the first session of day 1, maybe even further on day 1 at times, and again, in the first, couple of sessions of day 2, or certainly the middle session. It seems to be that the middle part of the day when the sun comes out definitely changes what goes on in this wicket, even if it wasn't bright. In the mornings and the afternoons, we don't seem to... Originally, I thought it was just a soft ball thing. I think we might have talked about that yesterday. But the more I look at it, the more I feel like it's kind of a little bit different to that. And it's that middle part of the day, no matter which team has been batting, which has quite often been the more brutal one. The only time that didn't happen was when the ball did go very, very soft for that session when England batted on day 1. But at that stage, the wicket hadn't actually deteriorated all that much. But if you actually look at, this is England's bowling by economy today, you can actually see just how ridiculous it is. India scored at 2.9 runs and over in that first session against England, and they scored at 5 runs and over later on. Both of these were against the new ball, but the wicket actually reacted quite differently again. And almost every time I think, okay, well, the wicket should do this for this amount of time, it hasn't done it. So if you look at that first session, they bowled with the old ball for 7 overs. They took the new ball, didn't start doing anything all that special. you go through the middle of the day, India get the new ball, and I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. Jadeja spins a couple. I think there was maybe one that bounced a bit weirdly, and again, you start to think it's going to happen. It's a fascinating wicket because from Ben Stokes's ball through day one, there's been no clear path of what this wicket is going to do at any stage. And India actually started bowling better in the middle without hitting any cracks. I'm not saying they weren't aiming for them, because obviously they still wanted to hit them, but they were actually just bowling really, really well. And so clearly there's a big difference in the talent level between the England spinners and the Indian spinners. But if you look at this day, I think a big part of it was in this first part, I think the England spinners were just a little bit tired and not quite getting through and waiting for the wicket to do their work for them. And in this one, I think they just couldn't land the ball anyway. But it ended up being a very different kind of day. It felt really, really interesting. We've had 3 great pitches. This is more a challenging and weird pitch at times. I think Jaiswal was hit on the arm guard by one of the spinners. One of the few balls that actually landed in the right spot. So it's been a wilder ride, but it hasn't been consistent in any way. Right? Like, it's usually low bounce, and then Jaiswal gets hit above the arm guard. It's been a really, really interesting wicket to follow cricket on, this one. All right. We want to talk about Ashwin. So we had plenty of questions in the chat over the last couple of days, and probably in the third test as well, about whether age was catching up to Ashwin. And as I said at the time, I didn't see any massive signs. I thought maybe, the ball hadn't come out of his hand as well as it could have. I thought he bowled very well towards the end of the third test when he came back from visiting his mother. Visiting his mother is probably the wrong way of putting it, but, looking after his mother, seeing his mother. So I thought that was a really, really interesting one as well. But he hadn't been as well. And of course, then he comes on today and is absolutely outstanding. He got Duckett the way he kind of always gets. He's always a chance with Duckett, because Duckett's trying to protect his outside edge. And so he sort of gets slightly inside the ball when he's playing that forward defense. Do you remember when Duckett said that his reverse sweep was as good as his defense? He's wrong, isn't he? It's probably better. So he got that wicket, of course, and then Ollie Pope, who I think has an issue with Ashwin in general, but certainly early on in his innings, he was all over the shop. But again, that was a straight ball, right? In fact, if that had spun even an inch, it probably missed his leg stump. Just really good new ball bowling. This is Ashwin's average by batting hand with the new ball in India in the last 5 years. You can see against left-handers, averaging 16 against him, and the right-handers aren't doing all that much more as well. This is Ashwin by match innings with a new ball in India. So this shocked me, actually, that he'd be so good in the third innings specifically. But you could certainly see, towards the end of the game when he is taking that ball, I think it plays into all of his skills a little bit more, because he can still skid the ball through, but also he gets a little bit more inconsistent bounce, and he has the ability to just do sideways spin if he wants to. It kind of gives him all of his weapons a little bit more. Whereas I think if he, when he's taking the new ball in the first innings, it might be ragging sideways, but that probably helps a bowler a little bit more like Jadeja than it does Ashwin. Whereas Ashwin is probably more in the game with inconsistent bounce and the odd ball skidding through and everything else. But just an absolutely fantastic new ball bowler. He might go down as the first truly great new ball spinner. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. I know Pereira was brilliant at it for Sri Lanka for a long time as well, but I'm trying to think if there was anyone else that was like that. We've obviously seen quite a few of them in white ball cricket, but Ashwin has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm setting this up a little bit because we could see that he usually bowls around 30% of the time with the new ball in India in the last 5 years. And in this series, it's only gone down to 25%. But the reason that is more interesting to me is there's been plenty of chances to give him the new ball in this series, and India hasn't really gone with it. And I think a part of it is, I think it's to do with Duckett opening the batting, and they think that it's such a good matchup for them that it's worth going with Ashwin. But because Crawley's at the other end, there's probably an element. Sorry, let me take that back. with Duckett being there, it's a good matchup for them. But with Crawley at the other end, he's the weaker player against spin. So if they're going to use a spinner early on, perhaps they've maybe thought about the left arm finger spinners a little bit more than Ashwin going to him traditionally. But the other thing, the main reason for this is, I would say, Rohit Sharma has just probably overbowled his new bowlers, especially against Crawley. I would have said, let Duckett try and work it out against the spinners early on. We still think we can skid one through. And certainly Ashwin is such a good matchup for him. You know, that question was asked, I want to say, in the first test by fans. It's been asked pretty consistently ever since. And you watch him bowl today, Ashwin, and you do think to yourself, it's just worth giving him the new ball. He's so skillful with it. And just wanted to prove something else. This is fantastic, actually. I put this up on the TV. So you can see here that when Kuldeep bowled, in the second innings, he just turned it so much more than he did in the first innings. Jadeja didn't get as much, and I would say this blip was probably more occasionally just hitting the cracks and getting a little bit more turn. But Ashwin actually turned it less. I think this was 25, 30 overs into the innings. Sorry, I should have put that down. I can't remember exactly when they popped this up on the TV. But partly it was because he bowled more with the new ball. But it does tell you that how dangerous he can be. And I think a lot of people had forgotten that, and it kind of moved on a little bit from him. You know, there was talk about how he was too old, you know, how he was, you know, how he wasn't looking effective. I think he had a bowling average of 38 coming in here. I think some of those things, the too old thing, anytime an older player doesn't take a wicket in innings, we go, oof, maybe this is the end for them. And I don't think the ball was coming out of his hand as well, but it just shows how good he was. And he looked really fired up today as well, I thought. This is Ben Duckett's average by a bowler against the new ball. So this is all the other bowlers, 65.66. And this is Ashwin. I don't want you to think the audio dropped out. There's nothing to add here. This is what I was talking about before, of why it is a good matchup. I understand some of the reasons why Rohit hasn't gone for it. But it's not for me. And this is his strike rate as well, so which also more than holds up. So Ashwin stops him scoring and really causes issues for him. As I said, I wouldn't say it's a technical flaw, because I think that's the wrong way of looking at it, but there's a technical issue with how Duckett is trying to combat Ashwin by coming sort of slightly outside the line. They're sort of the Devon Conway method. And what it means is that it brings short leg into and probably leg slip as well, if we're being honest, a little bit more into the game. And with Ashwin, you kind of have to pick your poison. And that's why I was saying before that the reverse sweep might actually be a better option. Just reverse sweep him even on a higher level. And we've got a piece coming up on sweeps soon, because it is a really interesting part of England's play. But England reverse sweeping. Duckett is reverse sweeping against spinners something like 55%. Not reverse sweeping, sweeping all the different kinds of sweep. 55% of all his scoring, all of his runs come from sweep. So it is absolutely crazy what he manages to do. All right, let's go on to the other spinner. In fact, do we have to call Kuldeep Yadav an all-rounder based on today? This is Kuldeep Yadav's career starting back in 2017. I think a lot of fans were quite upset that Kuldeep Yadav didn't bowl as many overs in the first innings. Very important to remember that if you have 5 bowlers, chances are someone is going to be under-bowled. And I think Kuldeep's figures look very good, but there's probably an element think about it. We look at the figures more than they do on the field. On the field, they are looking at conditions, looking at how tired they are, looking at how threatening they look, and everything else. And I think if you go back and look at Kuldeep in that first innings, he wasn't looking like breaking through, although the fact he did bowl very, very, very well at times. But, they were taking wickets regularly up until that point. He probably went back to his wicket-taking bowlers a little bit more. Kuldeep could have bowled an extra 5 overs. But the point being that when you have 5 bowlers available to you, chances are someone gets under-bowled. Like India didn't use their seamers at all, except for maybe 3 overs from Siraj. Akash didn't bowl. But if you look at Kuldeep, they've been bowling him pretty consistently around this, 15 to 16 over mark, right? There's a plan here. It's to use him. I think what they want to use him is if they think there's a top order batter who can't play him, or they think there's a flat moment when they need a change up, they're going to use him as a bowler. They're going to use the reverse swing for the exact same thing. So he's kind of there already vying with those reverse swing overs, and then they want him to bowl against the tail, which is a perfect usage of a wrist spinner, right? The problem is that because there's two other spinners in the side, he's not getting those other overs that he would normally get. And so you can see here that they've got a bit of a plan for him and the way that they use him. I don't think they're using him wrong, but there are probably days when he can bowl, extra spells if they want to. But it's hard to get the ball when the conditions are right for spin. It's usually going to help finger or wrist spin, and they've got two world-class bowlers at the other end. Two future Hall of Fame bowlers at the other end. Like, there's a chance he's sometimes not going to bowl all that much. The other issue is just the economy rate, and I think he's really proven in the last couple of games that he can keep it down. But earlier on, so you can even see some higher economy rates. So that's back in 2021. You've got 6 runs and over and everything else. This is really impressive, and we've never seen this from him before. So I'm really fascinated to see if something has changed slightly with him. But this is why they were looking at that 15 to 20 over mark with him before. This is his average in Test cricket, which actually over... Oh, we don't have... so what's that? 11 Test matches. I don't think I've ever seen a bowler in Test cricket start their career with 11 Test matches and keep their bowling average so flat. So generally, you've got a spike or you've got a dip. And yeah, I quite often with cumulative averages take away the first 5 matches just because it's absolutely pointless. Like, it ruins the graphic. You'll see, I've actually got one of Zak Crawley coming up in a moment. This tells you what a consistent wicket taker he has been. And it's an interesting one for a player who was in and out of the side and, certainly had problems with confidence. And I wouldn't say he got the yips, but certainly he was approaching the yips at times and everything else. It is remarkable that he's managed to, even when not in great form, keep this great record going. So since his debut, he's played in 16.41% of the Test matches that India have played. He's played 25% at home and 27% in Asia. I think one of the reasons that we're showing you this is that we actually think that he certainly in Australia and South Africa, not that they're going to go back to South Africa anytime soon, but and maybe the West Indies, it would be very interesting to see him in those locations as well. Maybe he's not as useful in in South Africa, England, and New Zealand. But in the other places where wrist spin can be quite handy, I think he could be a really, really interesting player going forward. He looks to me a much more rounded bowler. He's obviously a lot smarter. We'll talk about the wicket of Crawley in the Crawley section. We don't need to go into it now. But I think he's done very, very well. And we know the reason why he hasn't always been picked. That it's not that India have been overlooking him. And he's certainly a much better bowler now than he was before. In the matches he has played, though, he has averaged 21.82. Indian spinners in total, the rest of the Indian spinners, 22.44. And the opposition spin is 45.98. The only thing I would like to look at here is, because he has bowled low usage, I wonder how many times he's bowled towards the tail a little bit more, not having a go at him. That is what he should be doing. I thought England were at their absolute best with Adil Rashid when they would bring him on just to try something different and then would bring him back on to have trouble with the tail. But this is very good record, is the point. And now he's an all-rounder. So good things happening to him. Let's get on to Zak Crawley. This is from CricViz. Sorry, I forgot to put the CricViz bit up. Today he played 90.1% of his shots on the front foot, and 9.9% on the back foot. And of course, if you remember how he went out, that was off the back foot. He was looking at the pitch like it kept a little bit low, and it did keep a little bit low. For this wicket, it didn't. But I can understand why he expected it to bounce a little bit more, but probably a poor shot. But we'll come to the wicket in a moment. I want to talk about this. This is his first 3 tests. And you can see here that he is averaging 97 against pace and 26 against spin. This is another reason I thought they should have used more spin early on, especially when you have Jadeja and Ashwin around. Crawley's been getting them off to great starts just by being able to whack it everywhere. This test match, I thought, was quite interesting that he averaged 58 against spin. Not as interested with his average against pace, but this is... I wouldn't say it was a good track for spinners, as in unplayable or nothing like some of the wickets we've seen in India over the last 5 or 6 years. But I think we've seen real growth of him. I think he's a terrible player of spin when he sweeps and when he comes down the wicket. His main skill is the fact that he can stay in the crease and reach balls and put pressure on players without having to do that. And if you look at what he did to Ashwin, he turned balls that probably weren't half volleys from other bowlers into half volleys and put a lot of pressure back on. I thought it was fantastic batting. And there's so many signs that little things in his games are coming together. And I didn't think he would be this good. But there's some real key issues with him as well that I want to focus on a little bit here. I told you, early on in cumulative averages, it can be really, really warped. This is this series, essentially, right? And I think maybe must be the end of the Ashes as well. So you could see there, that was the 100 at Old Trafford, right? So his average was 28.65. He gets it up to 31, but it's only 32.46. And the reason I point this out is this is probably his best stretch of batting, right? He was a little bit more spasmodic. Again, one big innings, and then it works its way back down again. Another big innings. This is the best period that we've seen him bat, and yet at the end of it, he's still averaging 32.5. And the reason for that is twofold, right? The reason for his low average is threefold. One is I still don't think he really works through the gears of innings very, very well. And I think that's a big issue for him. And I think when you see a pitch in his favor, like here or here, either of these ones, and I probably covered most of these matches. When it's in his favor, it's actually very hard to see how you can get him out. But obviously there are, big periods where he struggled and other periods where he hasn't gone on. But one of the reasons we got 2 not outs here, we've got a not out 69 and a not out 12. He hasn't got a lot of those sort of cheeky not outs that openers can sometimes get chasing small totals. He hasn't got a declaration not outs, all the sorts of things that you that help your average a little bit. But the real issue is that there's a lot of starts here and he doesn't go on. And this period, as I've just said, I thought last test was the best I'd seen him batted in a test match. And was it last test or the test before? Whichever was it the one where he got the 270s? It might have been that one. I'm trying to remember which one. But I thought he's been fantastic as well, again, in this test match. And consistent starts here. But he doesn't go on enough, right? So this period, we hope that never happens again for him. But he doesn't go on enough, and he's getting these starts. And I think a part of it is that he's been given this enforcer role because they don't think he can go get these runs consistently. At a certain point, he is going to have another period, let's say not like this, but let's say like this, right? If you're averaging 32 and you have a period of 7, 8, 9, 10 innings in a row where you don't pass 40, right? Which is a fairly normal thing to happen in Test cricket. He can be in a situation where his average drops below 30 again. And I don't think anyone's going to forget, some of the impact innings that he's played and how fast he has scored and, what he has done. But he's just constantly leaving himself in this position of having this low average. And it's kind of the way they're now encouraging him to play. Maybe he can't do more than that. But I thought he could smash the pace bowlers in this series, and I think I wrote about it beforehand. But I thought he would struggle with the spinners. And watching him today, that was the most surprised I've ever been by Zak Crawley, how well he processed that innings. The issue for him is that he's got to be able to keep doing it. But if they're just telling him to go out there and bash 30 off 20 balls or 30 off 30 balls or, those kinds of innings, I just think when the Baz ball evens out a little bit more, he just puts himself in a position, of being a fringe player again. Anyway, I don't know who Harsh is, but this is a really good tweet. So I was wondering what this conversation was today. So apparently Kuldeep had a chat with Rohit just before the Crawley wicket, and he said that open up the cover because he thought, to allow for Crawley to try and play against the spin a little bit there. And if you have a look at the shot, Crawley's giving himself room to a ball. He probably shouldn't be trying to play through cover. He's also playing off the back foot when, as I said earlier, he had been playing off the front foot. Just really clever bowling from Kuldeep. To go back to the Kuldeep section that we talked about before, we haven't seen enough of this stuff from India, I think, in this series. But we know that Ashwin and Kuldeep and Rohit, these kinds of players are smart enough to come up with all this stuff as well. At times, there was... at times, I think we underplay what India have done just because Ben Stokes, it's easier to notice every tactical change Ben Stokes does because there's thousands of them, whereas that's not the case with Rohit Sharma. But I also think that Rohit Sharma probably hasn't been as proactive at times. And this is a really good moment where they set up the batter very well. And interestingly enough, the fielding team has come up with this really good plan to dismiss Crawley, and Crawley's more interested in the fact that the ball didn't bounce as much as he wanted. I just want to talk about Pope today. So in Hyderabad, he had 59 false shots in his innings and one dismissal. And in all the next 6 innings that he's played, he's had 33 false shots and been dismissed 6 times, obviously. And I just want to put this in perspective a little bit. Not all false shots are the same. So false shots early on generally, a lot worse because the batter isn't set. So if they've made a mistake, the chances are that mistake will lead to an out. Whereas you can make a mistake later on, but maybe you've pushed the field back a little bit. Or you can make a mistake later on, and it might be that the ball doesn't come from the middle of the bat and it might pop up, but you're in control of that ball a little bit more. The problem with Pope has been that a lot of these mistakes have been very, very early on in his innings. He hasn't been set. They've got attacking fielders in. They're attacking the stumps, whatever that may be. And so they've all come against him. But this is also just regression, right? We talked about the luck at the time in that first innings. I think he made a lot of it because I do think he really put India off. I think they had key plans of how to bowl to him, and he made them, he just shocked them and they didn't know how to react to that. But a lot of it is also just normal sort of regression that you see, right? If you have an innings where you get away with a couple, chances are later on you'll have innings where you don't. That just is how this thing works. And unfortunately for Ollie Pope, but also just on his wicket, Ashwin nutmegged him. He's in such a bad position on what was essentially a straight ball that hit the center of the wicket. It was very good bowling, but it was probably the undercutter type ball straight through. And there you go. All right. And I just want to talk about Dhruv Jurel also. So we could see here just how straight he played on this wicket, especially when he was looking for boundaries. England had essentially a fielder at straight on. They had a fielder like here, so kind of like a wide long off or a very straight extra cover, and they had a fielder here. 3 fielders covering this boundary, and that was because of the way he'd been playing the spinners so far. So when he went I think he went at both the spinners, but I remember Bashir, and I remember thinking, sometimes you watch a player attack with the tail. I'm trying to think if there's another one in this game that I am misremembering. There was, I can't remember now. Maybe it was the last match, but someone was batting with the tail, and you're watching them and you go, well, they're eventually going to hit this straight up in the air. And I was watching him bat with the tail, and obviously he didn't attack as much, but I was thinking, all the shots he's playing, these are the right cricket shots to be playing. And if he goes out to them, it's just because he hasn't executed perfectly, or the ball hasn't, come onto the bat right, or it's hit a crack, or whatever that may be. But he's putting himself in a great position to play those shots over and over again. I thought he's so impressive. Missed the stumping, certainly a stumping he should have taken. Ball ended up around his chin, but it was off his gloves. He's certainly been tidy. The catch off Jimmy Anderson was exceptional as well. But so impressive watching him bat. Really looking forward, obviously to Rishabh Pant coming back, but really looking forward to watching more of Dhruv Jurel in the rest of the world and how he goes about his cricket and taking a keener eye on him, because it impresses me as a player. He looks like a player who is older than he is, if that makes sense. He just looks more. He looks like Patidar should look. Like he knows exactly what to do in the innings and goes about it. And so on day 2, he had a strike rate of 50. On day 3, to start, when he was batting with Kuldeep, he had a strike rate of 50. And then he got it up to 75 without particularly going nuts or anything, but just good, clever cricket. That's just a professional innings all the way through. It really, really impressed me. So as I said, can't wait to see more of him. That is the end of the scoreboard part of the show, but we've got a whole bunch of chats and super chats and all sorts of chats coming through. So we'll take a break here, and then after the break, we will get to your questions. I'm Jared Kimber, and this is Scoreboard, and we do this at the end of every day's play. We will be back again tomorrow to do it some more. But let's take a quick break, and then after the break, your questions.
Ever wondered why slower deliveries work, what a zombie ball is, or how Sunil Gavaskar would have batted in T20? Well, we have the channel for you, Good Areas. Twice a week, we have a new deep dive into a great story from cricket on our main channel, Good Areas. It is the history and present of cricket as narrated by me. If you make any content, Memento is the tool for you. Take your long format pods and meetings and anything you have and let Memento cut and slice it up for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try memento.fm today.
All right, welcome back to the Scoreboard. If this is your first time, why have you not subscribed? What's wrong with you? I've been talking for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 31 minutes. Please subscribe, but also if you're watching, chuck us a like, go in the comments. I see quite a few of you in there already. I've got some questions and I've got some super chats. I'll go through them. Then we'll take another ad and I'll see what else has come up. So keep putting them in. Where are we here? Oh, here he is. Shara says, do you think both teams underutilized seam bowling wicket to wicket on this pitch? It has cracks and variable bounce, and I feel it was definitely worth trying. I think the cracks... I tried to find a really good photo on social media of the cracks today because they showed some great footage of it. Like, lovely. I don't know. I don't know how they filmed that, whether they had it on a dolly or what a situation. Sorry, I'm getting a bit film geeky here, but I really like the super close-up moving shots of the pitch. I thought when Ollie Robinson was bowling to Jaswal, so when was that? Yesterday early? Or midday, I suppose, middle session. I thought that the cracks were in the wrong spot for the bowlers. It was to the left-handers. And to the right-handers, I didn't think there was a great crack to bowl to attack the stumps. Interestingly enough, I thought the best bowling to the cracks by seaman was probably Ollie Robinson when he went short. There was one that just jagged back, but I don't know how easy that was to hit. And also... Siraj is maybe the only bowler in this game that you would want to be doing that for a period of time, and maybe India haven't needed that. But I think if you go back, Shara, you'll see that I don't think they're in the right spot, or they've done the things that the seamers would have wanted them to. I think Jimmy Anderson bowled around the wicket, and I thought there was a crack maybe around off stump, but I think it's too straight. And every time he misses it by a centimetre, he just gets turned around too easily on the leg side. So I would assume that is why that has been the case. Maybe if we'd seen more reverse swing, we might have seen... actually, maybe that's not the case. Yeah. I think at times England maybe overbowled their seam. And I think India probably have used it about right. There are times it has been underbowled seam in general, forgetting the cracks and everything else. I thought they should have certainly bowled. England should have started with one seamer, just Jimmy Anderson at one end, or probably Jimmy Anderson at one end, with Hartley at the other end. Would made more sense to me, where you've got control at one end and you've still got the chance of Anderson nipping a wicket out. And then at the other end, Hartley can just worry about that. And if Hartley didn't work after a couple of overs, you could have given the ball straight to Joe Root if you wanted to, or Bashir. I probably would have gone about it from that perspective. Girish, our old friend, says, Ben Stokes not coming onto the front foot to play defensively has led to his downfall in both innings. Yes, I don't know how many people... Why would you come on your front foot to the ball in the first innings, though? Like, I don't think that's a ball you would necessarily go on the front foot to. And the second innings, he actually does come on the front foot, but he doesn't come forward, which is, I think, what you're saying. If he smothered that ball, that was a ridiculous ball, right? Because that's a ball that pitches outside leg stumps, spins quite a bit long way, and spins low. And even then, he was unlucky to be bowled off it. If he gets out to it, I think you're right. I think he smothers that. It doesn't mean that that wasn't a ridiculous ball. And also, most players still wouldn't have been dismissed off that because it would have hit your pad and not roll back onto the stumps. So there is an element of luck there. The first innings one, I'd have to go back and have a look at it, but my memory was it was quite short. And so you wouldn't really expect that one on the first day to roll on the ground. So I'm not going to blame him for the first innings. The second innings, I'm not going to blame him because it was a worldly ball. But other players who play it differently certainly would have handled that. It might just be that Ben Stokes is not particularly set up for a wicket like this. He doesn't always come all that far forward. Why is it with so much technology, coaching analysis, a batter's not able to make these minor adjustments? Well, you say that. The reason that players don't always come forward anymore is because of technology and analysis, right? Because the old way of playing, of coming forward and smothering that ball. So let's say, if that was Graham Thorpe, or we can even go back further, Alan Border or Graham Thorpe, right? Neither of them would have been dismissed off that ball. The reason being is that both of them would have been so far forward that even if it hit the pad, it would have sort of flicked the front of the pad and just gone off on the offside. Or they would have completely smothered it by their pads or even got to it near the full. That's not how modern players play, because if you played the way that Graham Thorpe and Alan Border did, you would just be pinged LBW over and over and over again. Right? The game has changed. That is part of the reason that Ben Stokes is doing this. Ben Stokes is not a particularly good player when the ball spins away from him in Asia, though. I haven't looked at his average recently, but I don't think he has a very high average when the ball spins away, whether it's off spin, which he mostly face, or left arm finger spin. He has a method that he plays against the spinners, which is quite often playing very late and under his eyes. And it's worked for him, but he's a flawed batter. No one would ever say that Ben Stokes is a perfect technical player. Addy says, Ashwin murmured something about leading edge vaguely caught on the stump mic after the show folks played on 51.6. Ashwin gets folks caught off a leading edge 53.2. Surely not a coincidence. Look, I think if you look back at the folks dismissal, the reason that he is dismissed is because that is a carom ball that actually spins quite a long way. It's very rare that Ashwin spins, especially a full carom ball, anywhere near that much, right? That was a ragging delivery. I would say that it was overpitched, and because of that, probably hit maybe, not the danger area of the wicket, but the area where the batters run around and that sort of area, and probably spun a little bit more, and that's why he got the leading edge and went away. Not to say he wasn't looking for the leading edge, but my guess is if he was looking for the leading edge, he wasn't expecting it to go to cover. He was probably thinking more along that short mid-on fielder, or maybe even a caught and bowled type situation. That ball really, really turned a lot for a Cameron ball. So all well and good to look for 5D chess with Ashwin, and if I was him, I would claim it the way that Shane Warne claimed a lot of the things that wasn't always his wasn't always his plan, but you still claim them. But if you're asking me based on what I know at the moment, and even with the information you've given me, I would say it was more to do with the fact that folks probably saw it was a Cameron ball. Very few wicket keepers wouldn't pick that. But it just spun more than he thought, and probably spun more than Ashwin thought when it was coming out of his hand. Shira says, you had the longest commentary stint in history today. I wasn't commentating today. So if you're watching the TalkSport YouTube channel, you would have seen I was on camera the whole time, but I was doing the analyst role today. So it's a long story, but essentially Bumble was supposed to be covering this test. Bumble got ill and wasn't able to cover this test. We had Coffee, but Coffee could only do a couple of days. I think there was supposed to be a replacement, but that didn't work. And so we just changed it up, and so my job today and tomorrow will just be a normal analyst with Tudes and Harmy, which means my microphone doesn't have to be on, but my microphone's on and I can come in and talk at any stage. So there were probably big periods where I wasn't saying anything. I might have been on for like 15 or 20 minutes. It's just because I didn't have anything particularly to add. But other times when I had the microphone and I was talking quite a bit, different styles, whatever else. So it looked like I was on, but realistically, I wasn't always commentating. But also, because I've been commentating so much in this series, I think, the whole series I've been doing commentary. Today was the first day I went back to doing the analyst job. So I spent more time looking stuff up and everything else, just because that's kind of what the gig was. Rahul says, what did you make of the route dismissal? I thought it was leg side live. I thought it was optimistic by India to review it. Seems like it was just like a fraction inside leg stump, from what I could tell of the DRS. I think when the ball's really full and it hits the pad, the predictive part of it is a little bit more whiffy, right? And Hawkeye more than honest with this. The fuller the ball is, or the less time the ball has between the time it bounces and the time it hits the pad, there's much more predictive. It goes from predictive to guess. Guess it. Didn't nail that, did I? I thought I had it, and then it. But it does. And so if you were to say to me, I was pretty confident that it. Looking back at the Hawkeye, that it was just inside the line of leg stump. I think that bit's fine. Ali Martin did a really good tweet about that. So that bit was fine, but I wasn't as confident with the fact that it hit leg stump. I kind of almost feel watching it that it felt like it was going to slide across to off, or it was going to spin too much and miss leg. And I think on commentary, I have to think back. I think I originally said that I thought it was going to spin past leg. I didn't think it was the end of the world. But as I said, those ones are tricky for no fault of anyone. A lot of the Hawkeye technology is not predictive, right? In other sports, ours has a predictive element, and there are so many micro things that make it not always as accurate. The only thing I would say is, and I said this on TalkSport today, Hawkeye started as a cricket company, obviously started by a cricketer, essentially for cricket reasons, is now a company owned by American interests. I don't know who owns Sony, but it's aimed more at football, basketball, baseball, and these sorts of things. Obviously, it's been around in tennis for a long time. I wonder if cricket is their main focus anymore. I felt in the last year or so that Hawkeye's looked a little bit more random at times. I don't know if there's been a technology change or they've changed the predictions. It might just be they've changed them and it's more accurate now than it used to be. But I was pretty good at reading it before. And I felt in the last World Cup, this series, maybe there was another series I covered before then. It just feels like it hasn't gone the same way that I usually think it would go. Not that it's rigged for any one team. This test has been hilarious, of course, because, at one stage, the Indian fans were complaining, then the English fans were complaining. So it's been quite fair in its unfairness. But I'm more talking about not the umpire's decisions, but just the Hawkeye path just hasn't always tracked with my theories on, or my beliefs on how Hawkeye sometimes tracks. Rupesh says, if you remember my super chat from yesterday, I don't. Does India have a legit chance of winning now? So I probably said no. So I talked about the maths problem yesterday. That was fixed by Ashwin's spell, really. Although Crawley almost got it a little bit more. And then obviously England bowled horrendously. If England had bowled, just landed the ball in the right length, I think we'd be thinking very differently about this game at the moment. But as I said in the opener, Rupesh, if you go through, like there's a lot of Indian people go, oh, I can't believe how cocky England was. How cocky were Indian fans at lunch on day one? And rightfully so, right? At that stage, England had no chance of winning this game. On drinks on day two, India had no chance of winning the game. And even an hour after that, with that partnership, still India had a very little chance of winning it. And now England have no chance of winning it. It's been a fascinating game for the swings. I'm not 100% sure, but I think at the very least, India was over 5-1. And I know England got to like 7-1 at one stage, and they're probably more than that now, probably about 100-1. It is just wildly swung. Incredible game from that perspective. RG says, big fan of your content. Big fan of your super chat, RG. You think India will be able to handle the wicket with the older ball tomorrow? They should. I don't know what this wicket is going to do. Jaiswal was hit on the arm. There was another ball that kept low and skidded through. when England put it roughly in the right area, which was very rarely, I thought there was still some action on this wicket. I did think that Hartley looked like someone who is, the pressure was on him, whereas maybe in that fourth innings in Hyderabad, the pressure was on the Indian batters. I thought Root just looks stiff when he's bowling. He warmed up yesterday to bowl, and I thought, geez, looks really stiff here. So from that perspective, that's two of the spinners, and Shoaib Bashir has looked fine. I don't know. I kind of feel like if there's going to be like a string of wickets quickly, Hartley is probably the more likely, or even Root is the more likely, and they don't look as in the same kind of touch right at the moment as Root does. In the same way that actually, yesterday I thought it was hard for India with all the different obstacles to be able to work their way back in. But if you think about all the things that went in their direction, one was the pitch didn't play any real part in that first session. They batted really, really well. Then Ashwin took wickets without the wicket assisting them to start with. And then the whole whatever happened in that final session. All those things had to go right for India to go from a position where they shouldn't have won the game to a position where they should win the game, right? England would need the same thing tomorrow. It's very unlikely, especially as the ball should be a little bit softer. Although I don't know if the softball thing will matter all that much here, but it could. I wouldn't rule out 2 or 3 wickets in a batch, making things a little bit awkward, but it would take like the 4th or the 5th major turnaround in this game for England to win. Surely this game is out of surely this game is just done with the turnarounds, RG. Devang says, can Rohit be too frenetic as an opener at times? No, I don't think so. He's playing more aggressive cricket than I think. Well, I think he's probably playing the kind of cricket that he probably always should have. So I think there's an element of that with Rohit at the moment. It's weird that you say that. He's like one of the least frenetic people I can think of. Michael Slazer, there's a frenetic opener. I don't know if I feel that way with Rohit at all. I think he tries to put pressure back on the bowlers. And I think he's at his best when he does that. He's going to fail sometimes. But in the games when he doesn't fail, I think he has the ability to break teams in a kind of a Matthew Hayden style, but not in a Matthew Hayden method. Hayden was more about the physicality and the strength and the big front foot. Rohit does it in a completely different style, but they're very similar in that they can break you in about 40 minutes and then they can kind of milk you afterwards, which is, almost the best of both worlds. I don't know if you can be milked once you're broken, but hey. Raghu Rahman says, Raghu here we go. Love JK and team, me and the team, who I'll speak for. Love you. England losing 6 or 7 wickets for 35. Surely pitch was not so bad. Do you agree? Yeah, I don't think it was massively pitch. I'm trying to think of the Bairstow one comes to mind as pitch. Hartley was a bad shot. I can't remember if that did anything off the surface. I certainly, the Ben Stokes one was pitch. Even if you want to say he didn't play it well, it was still, that's not happening on a normal pitch. You don't get the ball to spin at that speed and keep low on a normal pitch. So pitch played a part there. Crawley's kept a little bit low, but I think it was more good bowling and wrong shot. I don't think he kept low if that was a normal game, you might go, that kept a bit low. But on this wicket, you're like, well, that's friggin' bounced 10 times higher than some balls on this wicket, right? So yeah, they got to a point where I thought, the way the wicket was playing, where they were 140 in front, I want to say, 3 wickets down, or were they 4 wickets down? And I remember saying to the guys, if they collapse here, they should still be able to get 60 runs just because the ball should be softening and the pitch isn't really helping India all that much. So I thought it was a really bad collapse. I mean, if you haven't seen it, Raghu, go back to the start of the show. I thought, that whole last session, pathetic. And it starts before then, really, doesn't it? But, that whole back end of the day, I thought they were really, really poor. Rahul says, what is England's gripe with DRS? Despite many umpire calls going their way in this test, there is still so much muttering and head shaking when decisions go against them. I just don't think they like it. I mean, they're not the only one. Sachin Tendulkar doesn't like umpires calls. Shane Warne didn't like it. I don't think it's particularly an English trait. But you're right. I think a lot of umpires calls did go their way on day 2, I want to say, Rahul. This whole series, I'm finding it impossible to keep which days are in my head. Maybe because I'm waking up at 2 a.m. to come and do these, but everything seems to be going at such fast pace. But I think they have a problem with I think they have more of a problem with the system than they do individual decisions. But Ben Stokes mentioned after 2 losses, and sometimes when you're a captain and you're a bit grumpy and you're interviewed after a game, that you say the thing that annoys you. So I think it's as much as anything that. But thank you very much for the super chat. I'm just going to take a quick break and play an ad here. But there's a few more super chats to come, and I'll just have a look at the room and see if there's anything else. If you haven't already thrown us a like, throw us a like. Throw us many different things. We like all of them here at on this channel. And this isn't the only show we do. We'll be back for a live tomorrow as well. We'll be doing 2 lives tomorrow. What am I saying? There's so much more.
Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you need to be just as careful with your computer's defenses as well. And for that, why not use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 4 additional months for free. It's also completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Sounds like rhyming slang, but it's not. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via nordvpn.com/Kimber. Picture this, you made a video and now you want the world to see it in their favorite social media platform. You could bowl into the wind by slaving away making edits, or you could let Memento effortlessly cut those epic moments down, making them perfect for your social media followers. It's like having a runner. You play the shot and they do all the hard work. Sync up your podcast and YouTube and they will be the substitute fielder who does all of the work. With Memento, you can craft a long innings down to the best highlights. Make your content, but let Memento cut it.
All right, welcome back to the Scoreboard. Jared Kimber, like, subscribe, press the bell icon, do all the funny things. Amit says, who would you say is the Kyrie Irving of cricket? Wow. Who in cricket would leave there are some cricketers who believe in conspiracy theories, by the way. Isn't there a cricketer who's like a huge Andrew Tate fan? I'm pretty sure there is. Would Kyrie Irving be a huge Andrew Tate person? He probably wouldn't be, though. There must be some proper... well, there are. I'm not going to out them. But there are some players who believe in... but then you'd also have to be a top player and a champion, wouldn't you, to be Kyrie Irving? I'm not sure cricket has a Kyrie Irving. But I'm probably going to be thinking about that for days, Amit. But thank you very much for the question. Pratik says, should Jurel be the backup now when Pant returns? I mean, he will be, won't he? The way he's playing at the moment, he might be the backup batter and the backup keeper. I could not be more impressed with him. I thought he was fantastic. He probably won't play as much Test cricket as he should because of Rishabh Pant. But I just want to see how he develops. I want to see him in other places. Hopefully India play some cricket in England or something, and I can go along and watch him. Really, really fascinated because he just looks so together. Like he understands his game and how to get the best out of himself. Sand says, will a match ever go to a 5th day again? And also, like this one, also like it'll end tomorrow. If it doesn't end tomorrow, what the hell has happened, Sand? The draw got down to 12-1. So people still believe that we're in a chance of getting a draw in some of these games. Yeah, I mean, we will certainly get wickets. I think Pakistan is going to have some wickets that go to 5 days. But it does feel that cricket is being played at a different pace and a different tempo at the moment. Worth remembering, Sam, that it's also a little bit less so in the last 2 years, but was a very bowler-dominated era from 2017 to 2022. You're probably just not going to get as many draws in a bowler-dominated era anyway, right? So, yes, we will get a couple of 5 days. This match has packed enough in for 3 days that if we got to 3 days, I would have been more than happy. Punit says, Bazball not suitable for spinning track. Well, they won the first test, basically completely playing Bazball, and that was certainly a spinning track. They were in the second test, and they were in front in this test. So, yes, it's certainly... I mean, I don't think it works as well. It's not it's not just the things that you're thinking of, because everyone thinks of the batting. I think that they rely really heavily on the short ball to manufacture wickets, that Neil Wagner method, and that doesn't work as well on these pitches. So I think that's certainly another part of it, Puneet. But I just they're not a great side for. They're a flawed side with a lot of talent that is trying to maximize that talent with a full-on theory, right? What do we think? Anytime you ask a question like this, anyone, so many people do it on social media. Oh, look, England are struggling. How would they have gone if they brought the side that was playing the cricket before Bazball playing that style to India? They would not have been in front in this game. They would not have been a chance of winning the second game. They would not have won the first game. What happened in the third test would have happened every single game. Gray says, could England have used Hartley as a floater to stop collapse, promoting him up the order? To be honest, I don't think they're in a position where they needed to do that. I think you would do that if you thought that it was a conditions-based moment, or if you thought you needed 20 overs of a blocker. You probably wouldn't have sent Hartley up. You probably would have sent Robertson up. I actually thought in the first innings, Robertson and Hartley were in the wrong order. That even Hartley's certainly a better batter than Robertson, but I actually thought in that innings, the better bet would have been to send Robertson up the order, because what you wanted was someone who's very good with a softball. And that's what Robertson ended up doing. Far better than I thought he would do. Like, I'm not saying I predicted he was going to make that many runs. So I do think they can play around with their order a little bit, but I don't think in this particular case it would have made all that much sense. But Robertson would have been an interesting one in this case, because you send up the guy and you say to him, can you bat for 50 balls? Get the ball a little bit soft. Crawley will whack it at the other end. You know, Stokes and Bairstow will whack it at the other end. That would have been interesting. And if it hadn't have worked, everyone would have said that's why they had the collapse. But as we know, they had their collapse anyway. Himanshu says, is Jadeja the only player currently can enter any team on both as a pure batter and a pure bowler? And what other players can you think of historically? Well, Imran Khan in the 80s. Sobers, Callasy, maybe Aubrey Faulkner. There aren't many. There aren't many who could do it for a career. There are some that probably could do it for times. There's certainly early Ian Botham is one that comes to mind. Late career Dan Vittori would have been another interesting one that you certainly you could have done. And Jadeja's the same. He couldn't have done it for his whole career. I don't know if he gets into every batting team in the world. Like he's not in India's best six batters, right? If he's not bowling, I don't think he would have had a long career as a batter. But he's probably in a lot of other teams' best six for a batting. And yeah, there aren't many that ever do that. Malik says, great performance from Ashwin. Felt he wore the ball down for Kuldeep to do his magic later on. England got duped into starting spinners with a new ball. No, I think England spinners bowl badly. I thought that India would start with two spinners, and I thought that England would start with two spinners in the second innings regardless. The seamers just hadn't been a consistent threat with the new ball throughout this game so far, and the wicket was keeping low. The new ball can skid on. Joe Root, when bowling well, can bowl quite well with the new ball. Tom Hartley, I'm still not convinced by him by a new ball bowler, but I think they think that he's going to be one. I don't think Ashwin wore the ball down or anything. I just think that the ball was wearing down naturally, and that's almost the ideal situation, right? Of use Ashwin within the new ball's doing something, and then you've got Kuldeep, who is so different and able to bowl later on. It's a really good combination. Whereas, even though I think Akshar is fantastic and I don't want him to disappear, Akshar, Jadeja, and Ashwin are not as good a three. They don't complement each other as well. Even though Jadeja and Akshar are different, they don't complement each other as well as Kuldeep, Jadeja, and Ashwin does. The same way that if you put Akshar and Kuldeep together with one of the other two, they would complement each other better as well. Rakesh, if you are looking, Rek has put a super chat in, but it hasn't. I can't actually see the question, so if you can find it, Rakesh, that would be handy. Abhijit says, Why didn't England start with Bashir straight away? I don't know if that was a new ball thing. I do think that Joe Root, one of his big skills is that ball that sort of just skids on through, especially when he bowls with that low arm action, which he's been bowling with for the last couple of years. So it could have just been a situation of, yeah, let's have the ball skid through and see if we can get that. And then you want the left arm finger spinner at the other end to give you something slightly different. So but I don't know how much of that is... what did I just call it? I don't know how much of it is just Bashir not wanting the new ball, which is also... And not all spinners like it. Ravi says, the technique of English batters is the reason for this showing. Bad technique can only get you so far, Baz ball or not, before it falls apart. I'm afraid they will be this bad in most series going forward. They were literally the worst batting team in the world for ages, Ravi. And they batted well enough to get themselves in a position where India were out of this game at times. I think we've got to have more perspective on what's been going on. They are no longer the worst batting team in the world. They are still flawed. That's not going to go away. Their method has worked at times. I mean, when Crawley was smashing the ball around, were you saying the same thing? Because he's still flawed. He played a shot that was completely a bottom-hand shot across the line. I can't remember who was the bowler. And he got away with it, and it was a really good shot. It was still the same flawed shot. If he'd stayed in for a little bit longer and hit a few more boundaries, this game could be completely different. They've kept the technical flaws that they have. They've kept themselves within touch of winning 3 of the 4 matches with bad techniques. So when you're saying it's not working, I'm like, I don't know. You want to know what's not working? Look at the 10 test matches before baseball. Pango says, do you see England coming back in the series and avoiding 4-0? Sorry, 3-1 after these games, looking at 4-1. The last wicket, I need to know more about the pitch. How much is it going to help their seamers and everything else? I think the thing with England is I'm going to be really honest. There was Ben Stokes and McCullum were very optimistic. A lot of the England players were not optimistic. They've already outperformed what they thought they could do in this series. So with that in mind, I'm not going to write them off because they've certainly been better than I thought. And I'm the one who wrote how Bazball might work in India. And even I think they've outperformed what I thought was possible. So I wouldn't write them off for that last test. I'm not even going to write them off for tomorrow. They're very unlikely to win tomorrow, but there's still a chance. And who knows what that last wicket's going to be like, especially if it seems around a little bit. Rex says, I saw at least 4 balls pop up to a vacant forward short leg when India were fielding and kept yelling choice words at my screen. Why did Rohit not have a forward short leg for a long time to the spinners? I think if you look in this series, he didn't have the forward short leg in at one stage and he had a short cover and the ball went straight to short cover. So to be fair to that, short leg isn't as popular as it used to be. You don't get as many catches there. This series, I feel like silly point and short leg have been in the game a lot more. India have been keeping their short leg really deep at times, which I found quite interesting. And England even at times, I suppose, as well. In fact, yeah, both teams have. Teams now think short leg is more about getting the ball off the face from the flick than it is for anything else. So perhaps if you have 2 players, you don't think you're going to play the flick all that much, you won't have it. Remember the other thing that is very important. You get this with short pitch bowling as well, but it's more for spinners. Batters, when short leg is in, will play slightly differently than they will when it's not in. So you're more likely to get a ball to pop up when there's no short leg in than you are when a short leg is in. So I think that's worth mentioning as well, Rec. But that's it. That's me for today. Thank you to everyone. Another great show. I mean, from you guys. I don't know if I was great. But thank you very much. I'll be back again at the close of play tomorrow. Please throw us a like on the way out. Subscribe if this is your first time. This is Scoreboard. I'm Jared Kimber. We are here at the end of every day of this series, and we'll be back for IPL and World Cup probably as well. If not every day of the IPL, then quite a few. But certainly during the World Cup, we will be around quite a bit. But yes, I'm Jared Kimber. We'll be back again tomorrow. 2 shows tomorrow. We'll be doing the Scoreboard whenever the game finishes. And then later on, we'll be doing... the overthrows and uncovered. I have too many podcasts with too many names. I'm Jared Kimber. I'll see you tomorrow.
If you have always wanted to turn your passion for sports into a career, well, I have the course for you. Fans with Laptops is the multimedia course that I came up with after millions of reads, views, and listens to all my work. It's designed for anyone to use their own fandom to get better at making content on the sport they love. Go to Fans with Laptops today. If me talking live about cricket is not enough, we also have an entire channel dedicated to the best stories in cricket called Good Areas. Find out what matchups really mean, understand the logic behind baseball, and look at the most important selection in the history of cricket of Basil D'Oliveira. Come and visit us a couple of times a week on the Good Areas channel for a new video.